Welcome to the Invigorate podcast. I'm Karen Wagner, founder of Invigorate, which is a site for people with autoimmune diseases. We offer steps and resources to help people manage their diseases. But this podcast is for all of you to figure out the ins and outs of all things autoimmune disease related. Myself and co-host Chris Burton both have a lot of years of experience dealing and managing with our own autoimmune diseases, and we're excited to talk to you guys about all of it.
Yeah, it's so good to be with you, Karen, and it's so good to be able to talk about all of these issues on Invigorate. I really think that this podcast is going to allow us not only to sort of discuss like challenges happening in the world, but really our hope is to create a sort of space that has not only information but also solutions that can improve quality of life for everyone who's living with autoimmune diseases. So it's really, I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited to talk about all the different ways in which autoimmune diseases sort of like show up and manifest in our lives, and all the different solutions that we come up with to just make sure that we can keep this thing going, you know?
Yeah, well, it's crazy how many people are actually battling autoimmune diseases.
Right, right, right.
And just the number of different diseases, and as you mentioned, the symptoms and how they manifest themselves in people comes in a variety of ways.
Hmm.
So, trying to, I know you have, and I definitely have done so much research trying to figure out how I can better my situation and how to deal with these random things that come up and
Right.
are so unexpected. I know hair loss has been a big thing.
Hmm.
And for me, joint pain and arthritis has just been an ongoing challenge. And while I've been able to figure out how to manage it and I'm in a good place now, it's been a long road to get there.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that sounds so indicative of so many of us in this community, where you're just really, you tried so many things, you feel like you tried everything to just sort of figure out like, how do I get back to just a rhythm that works? Not even saying like how it used to be, because I think a lot of us have accepted that it won't be exactly how it was before we had our illnesses, but we also want to have a sense of like, it's got to be better than this. I can't just be in bed all day or in pain all day, or scared to go outside without a hat on, or whatever the situation is, you know?
Yeah, I think all of us with autoimmune diseases at one point or another, if you live with it long enough, you hit that point where you are looking for other solutions because many times medication just isn't enough to live a quality life with these tough diseases.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's funny how sometimes I'll post just a random thing about like lupus, or talking about like arthritis or something to that effect, and I assume it's spam. I don't think it's actual people, but just all these different like links pop up of like, the cure for this, the cure for that, and I was just like, it gets me upset only because I remember how desperate I felt when I first got diagnosed, and I was willing to try anything. And if someone's really just out there trying to scam people, you're taking advantage of folks at their like lowest moment. That just feels really messed up to me, you know?
Yeah, especially the supplement industry isn't regulated,
At
and
all.
so it's so difficult to be able to find quality products that they're not just trying to scam you or sell you a placebo pill.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful nurse practitioner, and she actually gave me some recommendations of high quality supplements. I will post them in the show notes after for people.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I'm really excited about, us being able to share, the not just like, I wanted to say it's funny, I wanted to say we're gonna share the recipes, but it really does feel like that in a way of just like, how are we going to share the different supports that we found, whether it be literature, YouTube videos, or different resources out there. We're gonna make sure that it's a constant practice to have a lot of great information in our links inside the podcast info for sure.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, it's a lot of information to navigate out there. So we'll do our best on here to cut through the clutter and tell the real story of what's what.
Exactly it. Exactly it. We're gonna try to be like curators for you.
For sure, for sure. So, Chris, at what point did you have? I know I for sure had that moment where I was like, okay, medication is not enough to control this. What else can I do to make my situation better? Did you have a pivotal point like that, or was it more gradual?
I think the pivotal point for me was my second flare. Like I had I've had two really severe lupus flares, and the second one, that's when, as I was recovering, I kind of got the sense of like I need to change it because I think after my first flare, I was so young. I was like 23, I want to say,
Okay.
and so in my mind, it was the first time I'd ever really been sick. So I was like, this is just like a sickness that happened. It didn't really stay with me that, oh, this is going to be like a part of my life. I wanted to deny that as much as I could. And I think the second flare was like, oh, okay, this is something we're really going to have to just like not only live with, but have to learn how to like really mitigate. And so that's when I started thinking about, you know what? I don't know how much I actually need alcohol. Like and it was kind of like I joked that it was when I finally learned how to drink as an adult, right? Like you're not just drinking like how you did in college or whatever. And then it's like I actually know like, oh, this is what I prefer. So I was like, okay, I probably don't need that. Like I need to put that to the side. And then I went even further and just was like, okay, I know I have to get sleep, which is something I was very bad at doing. Like I just would stay up late all the time and wake up early on top of that. So just like not really sleeping. And I was like, I
Yeah.
need to also change how I eat because when I was prior to that second flare, I was a school teacher. I taught English, and it was very common for me to sort of have a stack of papers I was grading and like chicken wings. Like it's dinner, I'm just eating chicken wings for dinner, and that's it. No veggies in sight, no water in sight. So really thinking about how to change those habits so that you know things that would help everybody, but particularly for those of us who have to do like medications and how many spoons you have and all that, all those details. But really rehabbing my whole life.
And how far along in your journey were you when you had that second flare?
That was 6 years after my diagnosis.
Okay, so it was several years after.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had a similar experience where, well, 3 months after I was diagnosed, I had horrible complications, blood clots in my lungs,
Right.
DVT. Yeah, it was very life threatening. I was in the ICU for 5 days, very intense.
Hmm.
Um, but like you, I was like, okay, whatever. The lupus wasn't fully under control. I'm just gonna get back. I'm taking my meds, and I went full steam ahead in corporate America, rose
Hmm.
the corporate ladder, and ignored and pushed through every symptom that I had
Right.
until I got to the point where I had a flare so bad, then I was hospitalized again.
Come on.
Um, but that was, gosh, it was probably 10 years after my initial flare.
Come on. Right.
Yeah. But at that time, I was like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore.
No, no. And you bring up a point that I think is very important, Karen. So many of us were very high achieving people and very like ambitious people and driven people. And so what is it about us that we see the sort of check engine light come on, right? Like whether it's just like, oh man, my elbow really hurts, so like my knees my knees in pain or whatever the thing is, and we just say, okay, let's just take some aspirin and just keep going with our day. Like why do we do that instead of really taking into consideration like, oh, my body's trying to tell me something, you know?
I think we're young and naive.
Yeah. That's
And
fair.
until you get your rear end kicked a number of times or
Come
bad
on.
enough,
Right.
then you're either forced to learn or live a tough, tough life.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah, I think that invincibility feeling that young people tend to have is a real part of the equation here. No doubt about it.
I also felt younger, I felt like I was getting robbed of my life.
Yes, could not agree more. When for me being diagnosed in my 20s at the time where I'm seeing my friends, whether it's excelling, like their careers are starting out, or they're able to take trips, or just buying houses, like doing all these different what felt like milestones and accomplishments along the way. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to this doctor appointment, and then that doctor appointment, and then that pharmacy. It just did not feel like the same thing. So I absolutely agree with you that I too very much felt like robbed, like someone just stole my youth from me.
Yeah. But as we go through this, it was a nice wake up call
Hmm.
because it's like, while we have to live differently to take care of ourselves, and while that doesn't look like the 20-year-old partiers that we
Right,
once were,
for sure.
um, now it just looks different, but I'm happier and I feel healthier and better than I ever
Oh,
have.
no question. No question. Yeah, just more. And would you say you can feel the difference in energy too, right? Like you feel more energetic than once before.
For sure. I'm also more in the moment, and being more in the moment has just allowed me so much freedom to like really be intentional about my time and where spend my energy.
Hmm.
So I feel like I have a higher quality of life because those individual moments are, they're just more memorable. I don't take them for granted like I used to.
No doubt about it. I, with what you're saying, I used to describe it as sort of changing the sport my brain was in. Like I think my brain was very basketball oriented. So I was flying down the court of life, right? Grabbing the rebound, pushing the ball up the court. And then after lupus, my brain became baseball. It's just like I'm the pitcher. I'm gonna make sure everything's in place. I'm gonna check. Oh, I got a little extra sand on my cleat and kick that off a little bit. Let's get ready to throw this pitch. All right, that was a ball. Get the ball back. Throw it again. Like just really understanding. There's no need to rush through this. I have to be meticulous. I have to really take care of ourselves, and I think that's something that you don't fully appreciate until you have to.
Right. Yeah. I can relate. I grew up playing hockey and it was full speed ahead
Yes,
all the time.
right.
And you mentioned earlier just being naturally, I'm more type A, high achiever, just constant go-getter, and I've really had to retrain myself to slow down and start paying attention to the details. You talk
Yeah,
kicking the dirt off your cleat, get the ball back, like really just taking one step at a time.
you have to. You have to. Yeah, it's just being kind to yourself because I'm sure there are moments. I know I've had moments where the frustration with not being able to do things the way I used to do it makes you kind of angry with yourself and make you just want to say, we're just gonna do it this way. It doesn't matter. But you're gonna pay. I love that we use the whole language of spoons because you're gonna sort of overdraw on your spoon. So, today is Thursday. You say, I'm just going to do things like I used to when I was 19. Friday's going to look different. And maybe Saturday will look different too. It may be about Sunday ish, Monday ish, where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. That was a mistake.
Yeah, because you do end up paying for it if you overextend yourself. It's a matter of fact. So paying attention to those small signs make all the difference.
No question. No question.
But also, even though like our day to day looks different, I feel like I'm more productive than I was before simply because I'm taking better care of myself and I'm more focused because
Oh,
I'm more
that's it.
intentional about everything.
I think you hit it on the head. The focus aspect of it, because when you're flying, in that high achiever lifestyle, there's not a lot of precision. It's just sort of like you're touching everything, and you feel this this pride in it. I did 30 things, but you didn't necessarily do 30 things extremely well, but you did 30 things
Right.
versus now from like, I did 3 things, but those 3 things are going to be done really well because I'm very much taking the time I need to take care of myself, but also I'm giving it the proper attention that it needs now. And I think we've just learned, and part of that is also just like maturing and getting more experience, but there's a sense of self-preservation in it for us where it's also about, I know that I have a window to do this in. I can't drag this out. I don't want to overextend myself. I've got to be really locked into the task and do that sort of deep work that it requires.
Yeah. A couple things that have helped me on that point is I used to get overwhelmed and I'm going to take on a task and I'm going to do it until it's done. And that would just stress me out because I'm just frantically trying to get it done. It's
Right,
like,
right.
so now I'll be like, okay, I'm going to work on this for 90 minutes or whatever time span I'm into at that time. But just having that end time, it's like, okay, I'm just going to do what I can in those 90 minutes and I'll come back to it.
Hmm.
And that in itself has helped my anxiety and just manage my schedule better.
Right, right.
Yeah. And then the other piece is, I think, considering a variety of tasks, like types of tasks. So, like us doing this podcast, very like focused into it. However, if I am very tired or whatever, it's nighttime, it's like I'll listen to a podcast while I'm cleaning dishes.
For sure.
So, like mapping the activity to the time of day. So, even though you're not fully on, you're still helping yourself in some
Hmm.
way.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something. I'm sure there's great research on this, but it's something about being able to stack the tasks in that way. So if it's you're doing something and you have like an audio book on. I'm laughing because I saw my sister sent me a meme where she was talking about packing for a trip and watching the show while you're packing, and then the person just stops packing and just watching the TV show, and there's just piles of clothes all over the room. So just thinking about how we can stack tasks that really complement each other and not trying to like, watch your favorite show while you're supposed to be writing your papers, probably not going to work out. But being able to do it in a way that allows you to multitask in a healthy way, I think is a really good strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I think I stole the term habit hacks from the book. I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Oh,
People or
that is that
something.
Stephen Covey? Is that right? Yeah,
That sounds right. I'll confirm and we'll put it in the notes.
for
But
sure, for sure.
I love that book. It had a
Mm.
lot of really cool tips to just get more out of your day without expending more energy.
I hear that. Another book that really helped me this year was Atomic Habits. I love that book so much. It is just incredible. You read it?
By James Clear, right?
That's right, James Clear. Uh-huh.
I read it. I'm so bad remembering book titles offhand, but I've read a couple of his books and we even reference him on Invigorate because he's got
Great.
a lot of good tips and just ideas on how to kind of structure your day and life to really get the most out of it. I found him incredibly helpful.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Just sharp, sharp. And his story is it's not autoimmune related, but he's been through quite a lot. And so I think that helped him have to sort of restructure his life as well, for sure.
Oh, really? So I don't know anything about his background.
I want to say in the forward, so I don't know if this counts as spoilers, but spoilers if you're gonna read Atomic Habits. uh, but he talks about it in the forward that he was an athlete and had like a really bad injury. I want to say he played baseball and got hit in the head or something like that. It was something awful,
Oh.
like very like life threatening even. And because of that, it was a huge part of what inspired him to think about habits in the first place and do all the work that he's done since. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about that book for sure. Atomic Habits.
I it whether it's they say it's either death, disease, or tragedy that will force you to look within and
Right.
figure out your life. So in a lot of ways, I'm really thankful for lupus because, hey, if I didn't get kicked around as much as I did, I think I'd still be sad and miserable climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah, yeah. And it feels probably weird for people to hear you say that, but I've expressed a similar sense of, especially thinking about like with my work being in ministry, I think about how having lupus like deepened my wells of empathy. Like I think prior to I was a very sympathetic person. Like people would say like I'm going through this, I'm like I'm so sorry, like I hope it gets better. But there's something about knowing what it feels like to suffer that has allowed me to be even more compassionate. Like I think I would have been compassionate anyway, but I think it allowed me to really just say like, oh no, I know what it's like and I'm here with you and want to be with people through their process rather than, just say, oh, I hope it feels better. I go on with my life and they're still there by themselves.
Yeah, I hear you. And to add on to that, life is suffering, you know?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
think that it's supposed to be utopia and roses and wine and wonderful, but that's not what life is or what God made this to be.
Right.
And so going through that suffering and having something to really like you said, have understanding, compassion, that's what life is. And even if someone else's suffering isn't exactly like yours, you have that empathy for them because you can understand what it's like when it's really hard.
Oh, no question, no question. Yeah, I think if we really could spend less time trying to avoid suffering and running away from it, and spend more time running towards each other in these moments of suffering, these moments of difficulty, I think we'd have a healthier society for real.
I love that because I spent many years just running from it, and now being able to fully embrace the people around me and appreciating people more. It's that sense of community
Right.
is invaluable,
No
especially
question.
when you're going through chronic illness and long-term challenges.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because I think about this a lot, with like support groups and things like what was happening with Invigorate. There are so many people who their lives are turned upside down when they get that diagnosis. Number one, thinking about, and I don't know the data on every autoimmune disease, but I think about with lupus how it can take months and years to get like a proper diagnosis to know exactly what's going on with you. When my uh rheumatologist told me about my diagnosis, he said, Mr. Burton, this is the best time in human history to have lupus. And I looked at him like he had three heads on his shoulders because I was like, what do you mean? Like, what are you even saying? But over time, I felt a sense of number one, yeah, there's new medicines that are coming out. Like I think Benlysta, for example, was made the year before I got diagnosed. And just thinking about all the different like treatment options that are available, but also just thinking about the community I walked into of folks who were able to articulate a sense of this is what's happening to you, but like I've seen people try this and you can try that, and there's a real like deep bond that happens when you're with other folks who know exactly what it's like to have it but not have it.
Yeah. One of my favorite things I heard someone say is if you have an autoimmune disease, you know you can do hard things because you're living with an autoimmune disease.
Right. Right.
Y-
It's
And
true.
so it takes a special person and community to go through this. And I think that's why we're so open and tight with one another because
Hmm.
it's created a bond and a strong sense of community among us. And that's irreplaceable when you're going through something like this.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a deeper sense of understanding and a deeper sense of, I got you and you got this here.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking earlier about how much information's out there, and you get the long list of side effects from medications from your doctor, but you don't know what's what, and there's so much info on the internet. It's like, so having people to go to and lean on just to share experiences and
Hmm.
insights is makes all the difference,
All
especially when you're in the thick of it.
right, right. And there's something that has encouraged me about seeing people who are, especially like in their 70s and 80s, because what it communicates to me is a sense of this isn't a death sentence. That like you can still have a long life. You can still have a life. We talked about life being suffering, but there's so many beautiful moments in life as well, and you can still have those experiences. You're not robbed of those experiences entirely, and so it just in a lot of ways when I see elders in this struggle, it gives me a deeper sense of hope and like, all right, just keep going. Like we can keep going for sure.
Well, and like you said, your rheumatologist said this is one of the best time to be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease because we are learning so much more. When I first was diagnosed, I tried going to a couple support groups, and it was just so doom and gloom that I was
Yes.
like, I'm not going back. Like,
No.
ugh. But now that we're finding people who've picked their head up and looked at what else is out there to help their situation. And there's a lot of us who are really trying to do what we can. And when you have some control over your situation, which we do through our lifestyle,
Right.
it gives you a sense of control and purpose and something to work towards. So, long story short, it's a positive outlook.
Yeah. And I think that positive outlook it changes so much. Like you cannot I can't overstate the importance of continuing to speak life and continuing to speak optimistically. And it's not about turning a blind eye to the facts or looking at the realities, but it's really about understanding the possibilities and that the possibilities deserve their space. It can't just be something where you dismiss it because you're like, I can't see how when you're in that, like you've talked about being in ICU. I've been in ICU as well. Like you're in that ICU room, that's a reality, right? But it doesn't have to be your permanent situation. You can't think, well, I'm here right now. It doesn't look great, so it will never look great again. I don't see the benefit of that. I can speak to the benefit of saying this is a temporary circumstance. As awful as this is, it's temporary. It's not eternal. It's not permanent. It's difficult, but we can get through difficult things.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about a lot today and more high level. But going forward in these episodes, I'd love to get more into the details of what we deal with on a day to day basis. And
Right.
we can share insights from our experiences and solutions that have worked or actually not worked for us and
That part
compare
too.
notes.
That part too.
So, if people have suggestions or ideas of things they want to learn more about or hear about, drop us a note. We'll add it to the agenda for sure.
100%. And people also should know that they can follow Invigorate on Instagram and Facebook. Are you on any other platforms right now?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn. Yeah, we're all over the place. Find us wherever you're at.
It. That's it. So yeah, just make sure that you follow, and also if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, watch podcasts, make sure that you give us a good rating, give us a comment, shout us out, let us know what's going on. And as we said earlier, we're gonna have links in our podcast information. That we talked to James Clear should be very thankful to us. I think we we uh we talked about other sources of information, and we'll be sure to put those in the podcast link for you as well. So keep watching, keep listening, and let us know where you're at.
Thanks, Chris. Peace out, guys. Appreciate it.
Y'all take care. Thanks, Karen.